Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Things are getting kind of crazy in the news this week.
Yeah.
We're diving into some choppy waters today, folks.
Yeah.
Canada's political and economic future.
Oh, it's really fascinating how these separate things are all kind of coming together right now. Like we've got Trudeau, maybe proroguing Parliament, the possibility of those Trump tariffs coming back, and then just Canadians are worried about what it all means.
So you've sent us some great stuff this week.
Yeah.
And we've got some really interesting points to cover for you. So to start, can you remind us what proroguing Parliament means and why it's such a big deal?
So proroguing is basically like hitting the pause button on Parliament.
Okay.
It's not dissolving it for an election. It's just like suspending it.
Right.
It puts all government business on hold for a bit.
Okay.
It is a constitutional tool, but it's definitely a powerful one.
Yeah.
We saw Trudeau use it during the WE charity scandal, and it definitely raised some eyebrows.
It felt like he was trying to avoid scrutiny.
Yeah.
But why is it especially concerning now in 2025?
Well, I think the context is really important here.
Okay.
Canadians are struggling with inflation. The housing crisis is out of control. And there's just this feeling that the government isn't doing enough.
Yeah.
So proroguing now could stall all the important legislation on these issues.
Okay.
And that would just erode public trust even more.
Yeah, like adding fuel to the fire.
Yeah, exactly.
And then we've got this potential return of Trump's tariffs. Didn't we just go through this a few years ago?
We did.
Remind us what happened and why our listeners should be concerned.
Well, back in 2018, Trump slapped tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum, said it was for national security reasons.
Right.
And it caused a lot of problems, especially for Canadian businesses and workers.
Yeah.
Well, now we're hearing those tariffs, which were eventually lifted, might be coming back.
So this isn't just like a theoretical thing. This could really impact people's jobs
Absolutely.
and their livelihoods.
Yeah.
So let's get specific. What industries are most at risk if these tariffs come back?
Well, think about some of our major exports. Oil from Alberta,
Okay.
aluminum from Quebec, and vehicles from Ontario. A 25% tariff on those would make them way more expensive for American buyers.
Yeah.
Which means less demand and probably job losses. It'd be a huge hit to the Canadian economy, especially in those provinces.
It's kind of scary to think about those ripple effects.
Yeah.
And this is happening at the same time as all this other economic uncertainty.
Exactly.
Which brings us back to prorogation. If Parliament is suspended,
Yeah.
how can Canada effectively respond to this economic threat?
Well, that's the problem, right? Proroguing now would limit our ability to negotiate,
Yeah.
to pass emergency measures, even to work with the provinces on a response. It just creates so much uncertainty
Okay.
and could make a bad situation even worse.
So we've got this potential political move with prorogation combined with this economic threat from the tariffs. It's not a pretty picture. But our listeners probably wondering, what can Canadians do about all this?
Right.
Is there any way to push back and have their voices heard?
I think it's easy to feel powerless when you're dealing with these huge issues.
Yeah.
But it's important to remember that citizens DO have power.
Okay, but how do we make that power mean something? What can Canadians actually DO to make a difference?
Well, there are the usual things like contacting your MP,
Right.
engaging in peaceful protest, supporting organizations that share your views. But we also need to think outside the box. What if?
Hold on. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll dive into some ways that Canadians can take back their power in these uncertain times.
What if we reimagined what protest means in the 21st century?
Okay.
We're so connected now, we could use that. Imagine like a nationwide campaign, not just marches, but like targeted boycotts. Online petitions that just flood government servers.
Right.
A day where everyone calls their MP's office and jams the lines.
It's almost like using marketing tactics for a civic purpose.
Yeah.
Like disrupting the system, not with force, but with digital and social pressure.
Exactly. It's about making it so those in power can't ignore us.
Okay.
And it plays to a strength that Canadians have, this ability to organize peacefully.
And it makes you think at times Canadians have really shown their strength.
Yeah.
Like the Winnipeg General Strike in 1919, or even the Idle No More movement more recently.
Absolutely.
Canadians saying enough is enough.
Yeah, and what's interesting is that those movements weren't just one group or one region.
Right.
They brought people together from all walks of life for a common cause, and that's the kind of unity we need now.
Solidarity is a good word.
It is.
Because it's easy to feel alone when facing these huge things.
Yeah.
Like your voice doesn't matter.
Right.
But when you realize that millions of others feel the same way,
Exactly.
it's powerful.
It changes the narrative.
Yeah.
From me against the government to we the people demanding better.
And that's a powerful thing.
So we've talked about contacting MPs
Yeah.
and these more modern digital campaigns.
Mm-hmm.
Are there other things Canadians can do to push back?
Well, there's always the legal route.
Okay.
Challenging the government in court.
Right.
Especially if their actions are unconstitutional or hurting people.
Yeah.
It can be a long process, but it has worked before.
We've seen legal challenges change things.
For sure.
It reminds us that the courts can keep the government in check.
Yeah. And it shows how important it is to have a strong and independent judiciary.
Something we're lucky to have in Canada.
Absolutely.
But let's be real, not everyone can start a lawsuit.
Right.
What about people who are just struggling to get by, who are being squeezed by inflation and housing costs?
Yeah.
How can they be heard?
That's where grassroots organizing comes in.
Okay.
Joining local groups, going to town halls, even small protests in their communities.
Right.
It's about showing those in power that these issues affect real people.
Not just numbers on a page.
Putting a human face on it.
Exactly. And it goes back to solidarity.
Okay.
When people come together and share their stories, support each other, it creates a power that can really make change happen.
So we've talked about a lot of options.
We have.
From contacting MPs to online campaigns, legal stuff, and grassroots organizing.
It's a lot.
It's clear that Canadians have more power than they think.
They do, and it's about finding what works for you.
Yeah.
What fits your skills and resources.
Right.
The important thing is to not give up.
Yeah.
Your voice matters, and there are ways to make it heard.
But it's important to remember that these aren't quick fixes.
No, they aren't.
It's about staying involved, being informed,
Yeah.
and working to shape the future of the country.
Absolutely. It's a marathon, not a sprint.
Go.
It takes commitment to stay informed,
Right.
hold those in power accountable, and work together to build the Canada we want.
And speaking of what we want, it's important to say this isn't about being on one side or the other.
Right. It's bigger than that.
It's about democracy itself.
Exactly.
Making sure the government works for the people.
Absolutely.
Not the other way around.
Yeah.
We've covered a lot today.
We have.
It's been interesting. Maybe a little scary.
Yeah.
But I think there's hope here too.
I think so.
A reminder that Canadians can control their own destiny.
That's what it's all about.
It's not about predicting the future. It's about creating it.
And we can all do that together.
And on that note, we're going to wrap up this part of the deep dive.
Okay.
But before we go, I want to leave our listener with one final thought. We've talked about all these what ifs.
Yeah.
The prorogation, the tariffs,
Yeah.
the potential for things to get messy.
Right.
But what really sticks with me is this idea of everyone working together.
Mm-hmm.
Because it can feel overwhelming to try to fix these problems on your own.
Oh, absolutely.
But history shows us that when Canadians come together,
Yeah.
they can do amazing things.
That's so true. Think about those movements we mentioned.
Yeah.
The Winnipeg General Strike, Idle No More. Right.
Those weren't started by politicians or big institutions.
Yeah.
It was everyday people who saw something wrong and decided to do something about it.
And it wasn't always easy, right?
No.
There were setbacks and disagreements, even fighting within those movements.
For sure.
But they were united by this belief that things could be better.
Yeah. And that they were willing to fight for it.
And that's what we need now.
It is.
Not ignoring the problems, they're real.
Absolutely.
But believing that we can solve them together.
Yeah, to build a future that's more fair.
Right.
More just, more in line with what Canadians believe in.
So for our listener,
Yeah.
who might be feeling a little anxious after all this,
Yeah.
but hopefully also a little
A
hopeful,
little bit of both.
what's the one thing you want them to take away from this conversation?
I'd say don't underestimate your own power.
Okay.
Your voice matters. What you do matters.
Yeah.
Even small things like talking to your neighbor,
Right.
writing to your MP, supporting a local cause.
Those things can add up to real change.
That ripple effect.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
Like each of us tossing a pebble in the water.
Yeah.
And eventually all those ripples come together and create something much bigger.
It's beautiful, really.
You don't have to have all the answers.
Yep.
You don't have to be an expert activist.
Just start where you are
Yeah.
with what you have and connect with others who care about the same things.
And that's what we try to do here on the Deep Dive.
It is.
Give you the knowledge and insights
Mm-hmm.
and hopefully a little inspiration to get through these crazy times.
It's been great talking about this with you.
Yeah, it has.
I hope our conversation has gotten our listener thinking.
And maybe even doing something.
Yeah.
So, to our listener, thanks for diving in with us today.
We appreciate it.
We'll be back next week with another deep dive
Looking forward to it.
into another topic that's shaping our world.
Absolutely.
Until then, stay curious, stay engaged,
Yes.
and remember, The future of Canada is in our hands.
Yeah, and don't forget to like and subscribe.
Yes, hit that like button.
Gotta do it.
Subscribe to the channel and share this episode with anyone who might find it interesting.
Spread the word.
We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.